The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at www.mtsu.edu/CEM.
Hello, I'm Dr. Laura Clark, Director of the Center for Educational Media and Professional Development at MTSU's College of Education. Welcome to the ELL Collaborative at MTSU. Our morning session will be Writing Strategies to Support All Blended Learners, and it'll be presented by Dr. Derek Boyles, who is Assistant Principal at Lincoln Heights Middle School in Hamlin County, and Ms. Whitney Hodges, who works as an ESL teacher and math teacher at Lincoln Heights Middle School in Hamlin County. So now I'd like to introduce you to our presenters for this morning's session. Dr. Derek Boyles, Lincoln Heights Middle School in Hamlin County.
Good morning. So excited to be with you all this morning. Derek Boyles, thank you, Ms. Clark, Dr. Clark, for that introduction. Assistant Principal at Lincoln Heights Middle School, 2017 Tennessee Teacher of the Year. Worked for the U.S. Department of Ed over the course of 2 years as a School Ambassador Fellow, and then am currently serving as an ASCD Emerging Leader. Really excited to talk about writing strategies and things that we have found to be effective in our middle school in East Tennessee.
And now I'll introduce his co-worker, Ms. Whitney Hodges.
Good morning. I'm Whitney Hodges. Like Dr. Clark said, I'm an ELL teacher here at Lincoln Heights Middle School, and I co-teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math. I was 2015 East Corps Teacher of the Year, and I've done a lot of work virtually with the State Migrant Camp, and we just want to thank you all for being here and thank Dr. Clark for asking us to be a part of this wonderful collaborative.
Thank you, Ms. Hodges. And so now I'll ask that Dr. Boyles and Ms. Hodges join us on screen to begin the presentation.
Thank you all for being here.
We're really excited to be with you today and to talk about writing strategies to support all blended learners and virtual learners. To get us started today, just a recap of who we are and what we do on a daily basis. We just want to set the foundation for the work that we've been doing over the course of about 3 to 4 years. So I am the assistant principal here at Lincoln Heights Middle School. I have been the assistant principal now for 2 years. Prior to that, I taught English Language Arts and ESL for 10 years at this very school. So being able to see the scope of the work from the classroom to the office and how that is a relationship that plays back and forth has really been beneficial. I was recognized in 2017 as the Tennessee Teacher of the Year. And then working with Commissioner McQueen and Governor Haslam on standards and on rigorous and engaging instruction for all kids. And that's sort of what led us to this work, is how do we think about every student that is across the state from Mountain City to Memphis and making sure that we're providing the best instruction possible for them. 2 years I served as a School Ambassador Fellow with the United States Department of Education, working with the ELL programming there and learning a lot of knowledge that I could bring back to East Tennessee. I'm currently serving as an ASCD Emerging Leader and have had the privilege to work alongside Ms. Hodges in co-teaching and also in teaching overseas. And she's going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm Whitney Hodges. Like I said before, I was the East Corps Teacher, Tennessee Teacher of the Year in 2015 for the East Corps region. And I've also got to work virtually with the migrant students of Tennessee. We did in-person camps for 2 years, and this summer we did virtual camps, so I've experienced with that, and I've also taught camps virtually. And like he said, we did the TESOL program at Carson-Newman University, and with that global ed department, we had the opportunity to go teach in Europe. We taught in Spain and Italy, and then we've also just done other work with other teachers in Mexico, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. So we have lots of experience both in the United States and out of the country, which I think helps us bring a lot to the table. So we enjoy doing that. And I've also served on the WIDA Consortium in Washington, D.C. So I feel like we have a kind of a nationwide scope of kind of what's happening across the United States. So we are just blessed to be here, and we thank you guys for your time today.
So just to set the stage, at Lincoln Heights Middle School, when we talk about blended learners and virtual learners, we want to make sure that those definitions are clear, right? We're all in the COVID 2020, as people would say. But when we say blended learning, we're talking about our in-person students. And at Lincoln Heights, that's about 420 kids. So we currently have 420 kids who come through the doors every day. You know, we're checking temps, and they are sitting in classroom seats with teachers. And when we have that broken down at Lincoln, those teachers have blended learners. So they have a section or a class of in-person students, and then they also have a class of virtual learners. So they're not at the same time. They're different periods of time. So when we mean virtual learning, we're talking about the students who are at home on their computer, getting on Google Classroom every day and meeting with teachers for their instruction. What's important to note is that that instruction is the same high quality instruction. Whether you're in person or online, we really try to think about how can we provide the best engaging on grade level instruction day in and day out, as well as scaffolding to meet the student's needs. So whether it's a SPED student or EL student, making sure that we're building in time for them to get their services and the hours that they need. One of the things that we've come to realize in our short time in this new world of which we're living of technology and hybrid learning is that online learning does not change what we do or the best practices that we know. We have just changed the tool for which we deliver instruction. And that notion has been a big key to us this year, that we've been spending a lot of time over the course of 3 and 4 years doing the research at Karen Harris and SRSD, Self-Regulated Strategy Development. How do we make sure that we can teach kids to self-regulate on their own, right? Like we are content knowledge people, we are service providers for our EL students and our SPED students, but we also want to make sure that we're creating learners. How do we create lifelong learners? And the research of Karen Harris has helped with that, and that's something that we'll talk about today. And then the other one is the opportunity myth from TNTP. How do we make sure that each and every day that great on-grade level work is in front of kids and that we're providing them scaffolded opportunities to reach that within the classroom? So again, the tool has changed, but this research-based understanding has not changed for us.
Kieschnick in his book Bold School says, showing the courage to hold on to old school wisdom as we blend new school technology with purpose into instruction that works. So again, the kids are still doing the doing, and the teachers we are just using a virtual platform for those students. Like Dr. Poole said, our students at home are doing the same work as the students here in the building. And it is not simultaneous. Like our teachers have their own period where they are engaged with those virtual learners. They're not just watching the teacher teach and watching from home. I jumped out of college in the evenings and teach there, and they do watch from home while I teach, and I try to engage both the virtual and the live, and some of you guys are doing that across the state. But at our school, again, he said we had about a third that went virtual and 2/3 that stayed on campus. So our virtual teachers have a period just for those virtual students where they are live teaching and the students are submitting their work online.
So we say all that to set our purpose for the day. We know that there's a lot of differences this year, right? Like school just looks different. And out of that, some really good things have happened. For our building in particular, we've become 1-to-1. That's something that we never thought would happen just based off of our funding and our capabilities. And we've also, every teacher in this building has become Google Level 1 certified. We provided training over the course of the summer and in the first few months. And as administrators and instructional leaders in this building, we keep asking ourselves, how do we continue to provide resources for our teachers and professional development without putting more on their plate right now? And we say all that to set the stage for our purpose today. So I think it's important to know those things because what we want to talk about is learning strategies and best practices that scaffold all students to success with rigorous on-grade level instruction. We believe that no matter who you are when you walk through this door, whether you're a student with an IEP, you're a student who is an EL student who is new to this country, as well as a student who's been here 6 years, that we are going to provide the best instruction possible and that we're going to use research to guide our practices. We totally get that when you look at a task provided by the Tennessee Department of Ed and you go, oh my gosh, that is a rigorous task. I'm not sure. I'm questioning, can my kids do this? We try to say to ourselves, our kids can do this. And they can do this because we have research strategies in our toolbox to scaffold them to that level. So we ask this question a lot in our building. We ask, what is your ratio from consumption to creation? How much, when students are sitting in my English classroom for 10 years, were they consuming from me and how much were they creating? And this question is really important because of what the research tells us, is the one doing the doing is doing the learning. And I was a sage on a stage, guys. There was multiple times I could get up there and I could pow and tide and here's the next thing we're going to do and have kids fully engaged. but engagement is a byproduct, right? Engagement is the byproduct of great instruction. And so how much are they consuming? How much are they taking in knowledge from me? And how much are they actually creating? And when we focus on writing across this building in all departments, social studies, science, ELL, math, English, they're creating the work. They are taking the knowledge of which they're forming in their brains and their frontal lobes, and they're putting it to paper. And so we spend a lot of time just thinking about this. Now, we totally get that you have to consume some things, right? There are things that you just have to take in from the teacher. But how often are we allowing them to create the conversations and the writing and the dialogue?
And we do tell our teachers that if you are, this stuff is geared, this is an ELL collaborative and this is geared for ELL students. But again, it's going to help all learners. And on your team rubric, anything that's going to help an ELL student or a special education student is going to help everybody. If you put up if you show a visual for an ELL student, if you pull up a picture of a bathtub and you're talking about how much water it's going to take to fill that up, it's going to help your regular students because they can visualize, oh, I see what we're doing. We're trying to figure out how many gallons per minute, fill up this bathtub. So that's going to help. And it just goes on with Bloom's taxonomy. The highest level is going to be creating the content. Mm-hmm. So we really push that in our building.
So here's what the research says about it, though, is when we think about this, we think about sort of three parts. And so this is from the interactive lecturer, how to engage students, build memory, and deepen comprehension. I mean, isn't that the goal for all of us? Helping them engaged, feeling them engaged, building memory, and then they deepen that comprehension over time. I taught basketball for 6 years, or I coached basketball, and I would think about, here's the foul line. And if I'm going to stand up there and I'm going to model, thinking about presenting instructional content, if I'm going to model for the kid to shoot a foul shot, and I'm modeling that, but I never allow my players to do it for themselves and to practice and to mess up and to fail, then they're not going to build muscle memory. I'm going to build muscle memory. So how do we allow them to play with activities and lessons and on-grade level content so that we can start building muscle memory, that we can start building that deep processing, that they're thinking about it and they're analyzing it and they're questioning it and they're going, I don't know what the word for that is in English, but here's the word in Spanish. So let's talk about it and translate it and then build off of vocabulary and knowledge and interaction. And then finally, the last wheel of that is the connections. So we're thinking about repetition, variation in thought, and then connecting it to real life and to what's going on in the classroom and in the real world. So that way they can also think about the metacognition part of, well, how can I apply this moving forward? It's a question we ask kids all the time. Well, how can you apply this? And it's not just about how can I apply it when I get a job or how can I apply it in high school? How can I apply this strategy I learned in English to math? How can I apply this strategy I learned in math to science? Because there are a lot of teacher moves and things that we do that kids can use later on in their other content areas.
Again, he mentioned Karen Harris at the beginning of the presentation, and we really value her research and powerful writing strategies for all students. She says, in most cases, students' challenges with writing are related to difficulties acquiring, utilizing, and managing the strategies that are used by skilled writers. And again, if we were in person, we would say, look at this list of A through H and see if you can identify, your students struggle with one of those areas. But we're just going to talk through them. And you could probably think of a student, oh yeah, this person struggles with B, or this student struggles with C. So again, she said specifically, many students have limited knowledge of what constitutes good writing. They just don't know. If they knew it, they would do it, right? B, utilize an ineffective writing approach. C, they do not engage in advanced planning, and we're going to talk about the next few slides, just how to brainstorm and some graphic organizers and some strategies to do that. D, have difficulty generating content. They just don't know what to write about. And again, on the WIDA Access, they have a pretty meaningful writing piece. And, we help our students say, if it's a prompt about what's a fun memory you have with one of your family members, you may not have a fun memory. You can't think of something with your grandpa, but you could almost make something up. So we kind of just help them do that. Just think of some words even if you really want to say you like go to the amusement park, but you don't know how to say that in English, talk about fishing. If you know the vocabulary for fishing, talk about that. So we help them generate content that way. Also, students that struggle rarely make meaningful revisions, and we are really adamant about, we use link.com, the students write, we print it out, they give each other anonymous feedback, we give it back to the original student, so that helps. They struggle with transcription. They evidence minimal persistence, which I'm assuming a lot of you guys can identify. Yeah, they just give up. They don't really want to grapple with the material and push through. They just minimally persist. And they have an unrealistic sense of self-efficacy.
Mm-hmm. This research for Karen Harris, as I mentioned earlier, is something that has been guiding us for a few years. But what we're going to talk through today is sort of each of these. As an English teacher who taught, all levels of students for 10 years, and then going into the EL classroom and seeing this, it's so intertwined. You see students who have the limited knowledge. Well, that's when we talk about exemplars and weak essays. We put them up on the board and we discuss what makes it great, what makes this one weak, how can we work to make it better? And we do that oftentimes of ones I crafted, so that way that, they sort of see what that looks like. Ineffective writing approach, that sometimes I think back to my English teacher who I love dearly, but we would do this reading activity. We'd read 2 questions and then say, okay, now write to this prompt. Writing has to be explicitly taught. We've got to make sure that we are showing them what it looks like. We're showing them the process that happens in our brain as well as the process that happens on paper. And so this research you're going to see throughout this PowerPoint. One of those is mnemonics for us. And so the research says of Karen Harris that we teach them mnemonics. And what mnemonics do is it links known information to unknown information. A well-constructed mnemonic is something that can be practiced really quickly and something that students can use no matter what class they're in. And we know, all of us know, that success in school requires some factual recall. We go back to that slide that says consumption to creation, that there are some things that you just have to know on the front end. And so mnemonics, like everything else, becomes a lesson. This is the question that we ask a lot in school. Have you shown them? So my students don't know how to do advanced planning. Have you shown them? How do we make sure that we're providing strategies and model effective thinking for them so that way they can see it? And then finally, the primary goal is to have students use them independently. How do we do that gradual release, self-regulated strategy development, that they can eventually self-regulate? And we're going to talk about that. When you give them a graphic organizer and you start and you model it through it, by the 5th one, you give them a blank sheet of paper. They should have internalized the process at that point. So these are some examples of mnemonics that we use in our building in all grade levels. So 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Tide, you may have seen these from some state trainings, but we have bought into that. These are what we're using. We have found that the research is true and they are effective for students. So we use Tide, which is for informational writing. And so topic thesis, important evidence, detailed examination, and ending, which also plays out in the EL classroom when we're looking at WIDA prompts and we're thinking about, okay, we need a topic sentence. Okay, how do we know that from the text we read? How can I explain why that's important? And then how can I wrap that up in an in-conclusion sentence talking about stems, first, second, third, and then? And then the next one is tree, which is for argumentative writing that we use. So thinking of sort of the same process, what is my claim? Why do I make this claim? How can we prove it with evidence from the text? And then how do we wrap it up tightly? These questions that are underneath the mnemonic are the additional supports that we added. So we gave them all mnemonics year 1, right, across the building, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. But we came up with questions underneath when we realized, but they need some questioning to generate thought. And so then they answer those questions, and you literally start to build paragraphs. Another mnemonic that we use is do what. So I taught English, like I said, for 10 years, and I would come into the classroom and I'd put these beautiful prompts on the board that were from the state or they were from Engage New York, or even when I was in the EL classroom or they were from the WIDA exam, and I'd put them up and kids would look at it and go, what do I do? Like, where do I start? That's 6 sentences. That's a lot. And so we just came up with, have we shown them? So let's show them how to pull apart a prompt. And so I would come in and I would say, okay, the first thing we're going to do is, and they would say, do what? And we would say, the do is the verb, the what is the noun. So let's start, now we know. And so then we would have that little mnemonic, that little mnemonic part so they could remember it and internalize it. And so at one point when they're doing this test without me, they're like, oh yeah, silly Dr. Bowles who says, do what? I know this is my first step. And so that's the goal of mnemonics. And this is just an example of what that plays out in the classroom.
We know that when we're writing informatively, we have to and the P in PAL stands for the O in PAL stands for what about the W? Then we know we have to what is the T in tide? What is the I in tide? What about the D? Detailed examination. And then we know we have the E, which stands for ending. That is how we and
So just a little visual to give you an idea of how we use it in the classroom. A part of the research says that you explicitly teach the mnemonic, that you spend some time and you review it on a daily basis, so that way kids internalize it and they know it moving forward. That way they can apply it when it comes to the test, or apply it when they're in a live application and you're not there as an instructor.
So we're going to talk about various graphic organizers. So they're used for organizing content and ideas. Students are better able to learn and internalize information when more than one learning modality is employed in an instructional strategy. And even with the POW and TIDE, I mean, and the tree, like you know, they had a tree. So that just helps them visually remember. Even if they can't remember the word, they remember, oh, I remember that there's a tree that goes with that. Graphic organizers enable the writer to organize material logically and to see relationships between and among ideas, and they enable students to literally see the plan. And that comes from Catherine McKnight, used graphic organizers for effective learning. And we use that across subject areas. And again, like Dr. Will said, they see it each and every year. And some of our students do not get pulled out for EL services. We co-teach. We have an English co-teacher and a math co-teacher. So some of the students get their services through Push-In ELA. But again, that's going to help them on their WIDA exam and their TN Ready tests and just writing in general.
And the key word of that is linear. So what the research has said and what we have found to be truth is that when you give them a web and you say, okay, in the middle, the idea is Halloween. And then you say, okay, come up with your ideas of Halloween. It's this jumbled mess. And so when you then have them say, okay, now write about that, it's a jumbled mess. And what needs to happen is when there's a linear graphic organizer, you're literally helping students build their writing. So when you think about a topic introduction, that's their first sentence or their first two sentences. And they're generating that content. So the planning isn't a waste of time. The planning becomes the foundational part of time, that it's critical infrastructure to make sure that you have a solid essay and a solid piece of writing. You go on to the IND of this organizer, the important evidence. Well, we teach them about stems, and we have them on the wall on their anchor charts. According to the text, it says, and so then they plug in their evidence. And then the detailed examination. This shows me, same thing, you have stems for that. This shows me that, or this is important because, and so now students have built 3 sentences. So we model through this process with them together, right? Like we don't just throw them out to the wild, but we do this together. We'll do collaborative writes, we'll do whole class writes. But this is what the graphic organizer looks for us. Now, you start pulling those away though. So then I hand them the sheet and I take out the middle information and I take out the title on the side. And then I get to the point where I hand them a blank sheet of paper. For 10 years, I think back, like, when you know better, you do better. And we were thinking we were getting ready for a test, whether WIDA or TN Ready, and I'd lay that sheet of paper in front of them. Had I ever shown them how to effectively use the sheet of paper? Have I ever shown them how to make a plan? And so that was just a change in our approach. And then the one on the right is another graphic organizer that came out of, we realized students were struggling with detailed examination. And like I say, we asked, have you shown them? So we started asking ourselves question. Well, how do I generate content around detailed examination? Ms. Hodges and I, we can write a detailed examination sentence. We can do it off the top of our head, but what's happening inside of our brain to do that? And so we came up with these 3 questions. Why is this piece of evidence important? How does it relate to my thesis or the idea I'm writing about? And what conclusions can I draw from it? You've now formulated a paragraph. You have a thesis sentence, a piece of evidence, and then 3 sentences below. And so helping students see that questioning takes place in your head, and that questioning is how I generate content.
Yeah, and I'll speak to the virtual learning implementation, and also just tied into the WIDA. He was talking about linear. That's very big on the WIDA. If you guys are ELL teachers, they're big on transition words, first, second, third, last, next, after that, And one of our prompts was about, imagine you're going to plan a middle school dance. Think about the committees you would need. Think about the steps you need to take. And like he said, if they look at the do what chart, think about you were having a middle school dance and, plan the committees that you're going to need. And when they write out those sentences, they're like, oh my gosh, I have a whole page of writing because they've written out, we need decorations, we need to pick a theme, we need these committees, we need a food committee. And when they expound and write details, they're amazed at how much they can write. So just that little chart really helps them to produce quite a bit of writing.
Mm-hmm. So this is an example from a teacher who, they're a push-in class, or they have a co-ELL teacher. This is their online platform, so from Google. They have all the things there that the student is going to need. So you'll see there's a narrative writing slide that sort of talks them through the agenda and the things they're going to cover in this chunk. And then down below is a pre-writing task that we just talked about that it's hard to see, but there's a do what chart at the top of it. And then down below it is the linear graphic organizer. Then you actually see a narrative writing on the other side, which was the task. And then finally the anchor chart. You know, if they were in the classroom, there are anchor charts all over our classrooms of scene and POW and tree and do what. But how do we make sure that they're accessible for students at home, right? They're not hanging on their bedroom wall or hanging in the kitchen, but that kids can access them. And when we're driving our lessons, we can have them on there for students to talk through so that we're still working on memorizing them and working with them. Like we said earlier, you know, the quality instruction doesn't change, just the way and the tool in which we present it does.
And even our students that are blended, when they go home and they access Google Classroom, that chart is right there. So they're not having to keep up with, oh, where did I put that paper that she gave me? Oh, I left my binder at school. It's really opened up a lot of access, even for the students that are in this building. So there's a lot of perks. If you guys notice, it's advantageous almost to have all of this stuff digitally. Yeah.
So this is just the same example from that teacher's classroom, narrative pre-writing. We also talk about manageable chunks in our building. We talk about them a lot, and especially with our ELL population, which is quite high, but thinking about how do we chunk it in a manner of its tasks that can be done, like a success chart, right? We think about the criteria for success. The first thing is I can complete a do-what chart. So we model that, we talk about that, we let students then do that on their own. The next is complete the scene chart so that they can go through those things and find out, you know, what is the setting? Who were the characters? So it goes back to, it's also good for comprehension. Because did you get these things from the story, or do I as the teacher need to step in and facilitate that knowledge and fill in any gaps that my students may have? This is an example from a student's where they were going through that process, and we talked to them about caveman talk and the purpose of a plan, and you know, it's a whole nother lesson, but that they can just jot down ideas and that it ends up building into an essay, but that it's a plan, not a full essay. Well, this is a time that we're just thinking it's perfect time for Q&A. So if you have any questions at this point or anything that you're just curious about, we would love to answer those.
Wow, I've already learned enough in this short period of time. I want to remind all of our participants that if you have questions, we want you to enter them in the chat feature. I did not mention that at the beginning. So please click on the chat feature. And if you have any questions for Dr. Boyles or Ms. Hodges, please enter them in the chat feature. But I do have a question for you. So if students have, so you work in a middle school, and so students who are learning English, if their writing skills are below grade level, which actually is true for many English speakers, but if they are not only acquiring the language, but they're working with a skill set that is below grade level in terms of writing. Do you have any particular suggestions for targeting that?
Yes, I'll let Ms. Hodges speak to that, and then I'll just piggyback off of it.
Yeah, we do have a lot of students, even with Dr. Clark, you're saying they're behind grade level. Even our EL students, some of them have interrupted formal education, so they just, you know, in other countries, they stop going to school at 10 or 11, and they start work, and they come here at 13 or 12, and they've not even been in school for a year, or they start late, and just the attendance policies aren't the same as they are here in the States. So yes, a lot do come to us with lower level skills, but like you said, it's not just them, it's a lot of people in the classroom. So we do encourage them and say, you know, even if you can just show us that you improve from one year to the next. I mean, the ELs can get a growth score, the students in the building can get a growth score. So we're going to talk more about positive SelfTalk later, but we just build them up and say, you know, just, you know, do the best you can, and let's just compare your writing from the beginning of the year to the next. And we do have that linked, the linked platform, which they have a free version, and we have ELL Brain Pop, and we do have them keep hard copy binders if they are in the building, and we just have them compare their writing to, you know, their writing from 3 weeks ago. And we do a lot of peer review, and I think it helps them to read another student's paper, because they think, oh, I could do that, or I could add commas, or oh, I could add those words. So we do a lot of peer review, and I think that helps the student. And we pair them, you know, kind of sometimes homogeneously, sometimes heterogeneously. So, you know, we intentionally pair them, and we kind of, you know, and I might coach, you know, one girl, hey, so-and-so, can you really help him see that maybe instead of saying then, can you just help him work on, look at your paper? You know, I'm showing them that I know a lot of English, because instead of saying, then I went to the store, then I went home, then I ate supper, you know, just, and then that really helps that student to improve his writing. And on that WIDA rubric, he goes up immensely, and he knows those words. He's just, when we talk, then I went to the store, and then I went and ate dinner. But when they write, they really want that higher vocabulary, and they really look for transition words. So we do a lot, we look at the students' work, and if this girl's really good at transitions, we're going to pair her, and we're going to talk about transitions that day. So that's one way. I
would piggyback to say, and from that, the research strategies that we're talking about today, they're standalone lessons, but they're not standalone strategies. When we get through this, we hope that the goal is that you see the 6 stages of research, and these are the high bank things that we've been like, these are the things for your money, like use them all the time and every day. But that these things are great for kids. When you have mnemonics, when you have a linear graphic organizer, when you're modeling that in the classroom and you're teaching explicit lessons on it, and you're not putting a grade at the top. Now that's the ringer, that once the grade at the top, learning will stop. But that we are allowing writing to be fluid and a growth process that Ms. Hodges is talking about. We're teaching them explicitly peer-to-peer feedback. We're modeling that. We're doing an example lesson. We're showing them a video. What does it look like and sound like? And the good part of that is not only are you getting better at peer feedback and you're making your writing better, but you're using dialogue, you're using conversation, you're talking in class, you're building that peer interaction. So we're hitting a lot of levels, but you have to sort of go through the process. There's no magic bullet as we know in education, but going through these research-based strategies, you see success over time. And we have some student examples to show you what that looks like as well.
And I will say, again, the computers have been helpful because Google Translate is right there. Like if they say, I want to use the word excruciating or difficult. We had one student that used a word cunning. He spoke Spanish, and he said the Spanish word for cunning, and nobody could translate it. I forgot what the word was, but he kept saying, I want to say the word, because we'd say, if you don't know the word in English, maybe someone knows it. Like if they want to say, I want to say difficult, then they say, oh, difficult, and they help them spell it. So one guy used the word for cunning, and no one could translate it. And even the translator couldn't translate it. So we looked it up, and it was cunning. I was like, oh my gosh. So anyway, Anthony learned a new word, and so did all of the other students. So Google and had we had the computers back then, he could have just typed it in. But I don't even know if it was in our English dictionary, Spanish English dictionary, but it was such a good word, and then he used it. So we talked about that word and what does that mean. So again, they learn a lot from each other, and Google Translate has been amazing because they can immediately, if they're thinking of a word in their head, they can get the English translation just like that. So that's been very helpful.
Thank you so much. We don't have any other questions at this time, but I do want to remind viewers, go to the chat feature and submit any questions you have, and we'll share them with the presenters. So if y'all will go ahead and continue.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there will be another Q&A session later at the end, so we'll do it again.
Another strategy that we found to be really effective, and it's one when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, that's a bunch of phooey. I'm not doing that in my English classroom, and it's self-talk. I was that teacher who stood up, and it was really hard to demonstrate it for kids. What does it look like, and what does it sound like to show them my internal thinking and my internal thoughts? What the research says is how students define themselves and their internal dialogue influences their academic success and their failure. You can think about middle school students, no matter where they come from, their background, when they walk in the door, they don't always have the most positive self-talk. They don't always have the ability to build themselves up, or they go to, outside of the walls of 8 to 3, and they're not being built up there. And so we have to really think about that. What does that look like and sound like for them? And when students learn to recognize the irrational attitudes that lead to self-defeating behaviors, like the I can't and I never can, and that's not who I am and I'm not smart, then we can start changing it to self-talk statements that are positive. How can we change the dialogue and the narrative for them? And we talk about 2 parts, though, in this building. We talk about positive self-talk, like I can do this, I know I can, I'm smart, I'm capable. And we also talk about procedural self-talk with kids. So we sort of have both framed out for them of, well, I know my first step is this, and I know the second step is this. And I remember when Ms. Hodges talked about this in class, that this is what I need to do to solve that math problem. So the positive self-talk and the procedural self-talk really has been beneficial for us.
Yeah, and I think it's true, just all middle schoolers, right? I mean, not just the struggling learners, but just when they hit middle school, just sometimes their confidence sometimes goes down, and they're just, so they get on social media, and sometimes they get, stressed and anxious from that. So just we do encourage them to think positively and to be confident And even just, to stand up straight and have good posture, and you'll just, feel better. So just kind of like the whole child. So another thing we share with him is about Novak Djokovic, the tennis player. There's a story about him that says mental demons were getting the best of Novak Djokovic. After having lost his last 3 major singles finals, and he had just blown a chance to close out Roger Federer in the Wimbledon final, failing to convert a match point and not being able to serve out the match, he had just lost 5 games in a row to lose the 4th set. He took a bathroom break before he and Federer began the decisive 5th set of their soon-to-be Wimbledon epic, where he tried to refocus. I had a chat to myself, Djokovic told ESPN's Tom Rinaldi of his bathroom break. I was loud to myself saying, believe in yourself. It is not a cliche. It really works, even when you don't feel it at times, to say some positive things to yourself. That's exactly when you should do it. So, and Dr. Bulls shared about football players in the NFL, how they talk to themselves. So we show videos like that. We showed a basketball video last year of just how that really does change. If you start saying it, we tell our students, if you say that, you're going to start believing it. If you say negative things about yourself, you're going to start believing them. If you say positive things about yourself, you're going to start believing them.
Mm-hmm. And I share with them just as how it made me feel uncomfortable to do it. Professional athletes do it. So we hook them in and show them a short video clip of a minute or 2 minutes, and then talk about that people across this country have found it effective and have found success from it. So how do we make sure that we're building each other up and are having positive self-talk statements? These are some 6 types that we present to kids and that we talk through, right? Like, this is a mini lesson itself. It's not just a handout I give, that we show a video, we look at this and break it down, and then you'll see on the next slide that we actually have kids create these statements. And there are 3 for us when it comes to writing, and that's before I write, and we think about problem and definition. What do I have to do here? What is my first step? And we think about the focus and attention planning that it takes for that, right? Writing is a difficult skill. So I need to make a plan. First I will, then I will. We use a lot of stems in our building. The next one is that middle part. Like, while I'm writing, I think about going through and getting my doctorate and doing a dissertation. That middle part of while you're writing, you're like, oh my gosh, I need a break. So the coping and self-control. It's okay to feel nervous. A little nervous can actually help me do my best work. It keeps me on my best game. And then the strategy implementation. How do we make sure that we communicate, my goal for this essay is to get better at detailed examination. I remember that from the last time Dr. Bulls and I sat down and we had our little one-on-one debrief. And then after I write, the self-evaluation, did I recheck? Did I go back to my do-what chart and say, yes, I did that. Yes, I did that. Or, and then the self-reinforcement. I did my best work. I put forth effort. I tried really hard. It's okay that if I didn't get everything perfect this time, because I know that writing is fluid and that we're going to continue to get better in this class.
And even just having them read their writing aloud, if they don't put a period, but they pause when they're reading it aloud, we'd say, you paused when you said that. What do you think we should put after that word you just said, since you paused? And that made sense that you paused. And then, so just that little skill really helps them improve their writing, just reading it out loud. They realize, I should put a comma, or I should put a period I shouldn't have. So even just reading out loud really helps them self-evaluate.
Yeah. This is an example from a classroom that a student had done. And so before I write, while I'm writing, after I finish writing, and these are just ones that we talked through as a class. So, right, like I said, you showed the video, we talked through those. I may have modeled one or did a think aloud of my own personal one. And then we just sort of created these under the Elmo, and students worked on, this student said, I have to plan and say to myself, what do I need in this section? I need to do a rough draft first. And then while I'm writing, I say the following. I'm going to use tide, this student says. They're recounting the mnemonic, and they know that mnemonic is on informative writing based off the prompt. So it's this dialogue and back and forth of play that we have with kids. And then after I finish writing, well, then I ask myself, did it make sense? How would someone else read it? What would it sound like? And just some questions to help guide their thinking. So these are anchor charts that we post on our wall. They're on our website, teachinginthemiddlepd.com. But we always think about middle school students, like what is applicable, what is real life for them. And so self-talk before I write. So these are some statements that we keep posted that if a student is stuck and we're walking around a classroom and they're working independently, 6 feet apart, that we can say, okay, I can tell you're stuck. Have you looked up there at those statements? Which one of those applies to you right now? What are your thoughts? And then just sort of going through that with them, helping them ask questions, that they are the ones self-regulating. And then we have some for while I write, sort of the thinking, I'm doing a great job. I know I can stay focused. We all have those students, right, that are struggling to stay focused. That it's a process, it's a longer time. I will not give up. My next step is this. So my next step is to get this sentence and this sentence. Or my next step is to answer this question that Dr. Bowles or Ms. Hodges provided for me. And sort of, the last one, I won't stop and I will not give up. So that positive and procedural sort of go together, that they're fluid in our brains. When we talk out, loud to ourselves, or when we're thinking through something, Ms. Hodge and I gave ourselves a task that one day we would just sort of jot down anytime we had a thought going through our head about something. Oh my gosh. And then we showed that list to kids and said, this is what's going through our heads. But we know from research that students who are in poverty or students of lower income aren't having those thoughts in their heads. They don't have the self-talk, they don't have the procedural talk, and that's something that has to be built through lessons. So many teachers in this building have said to us, once we've taught self-talk and once we've taught procedural steps to kids, we've seen so much success. Grades have went up, production has went up, what students try on a daily basis have went up. That's because they don't have that in their brain. So we always ask, have you shown them? How do we make sure that we're teaching this explicitly to kids? This is an example from the classroom. Ms. Hodge, just talk to us.
Yeah, and we'll do a disclaimer. This is from previous years before COVID. But yeah, we would have them get together, and here they did independent work first, and they were trying to decide, they want to build something for their town. So they have this money. So do they want to paint a mural? Do they want to build a statue? Do they want to build a park? So, they got together and, we told, and again, at first, we said, what are your guys' thoughts when you look at this? Because it was like, 5 paragraphs, and they were like, it's too hard. I don't want to do that. I can't write 5 paragraphs about a statue. And we said, okay, well, that's okay. Well, then maybe could you write 5 paragraphs about a mural? Could you write 5 paragraphs? So we got them thinking about, because on your Reader, sometimes you are given options, or on T and Ready, or on these different prompts, you could go a couple different ways. So we did, but some of their thoughts were negative. That's hard. I don't want to do it. Can we work together? This is too hard. But then, we said, what can you do? What can you do? So yeah, I could write about, we could write a mural, we could draw about our farmers market, because we have a really good farmers market in Morristown. Or we could put that we have really good high schools that have won stuff, and our middle school won this. And they started talking about the positive parts of Morristown. And we have a college, and we have ELL Lakeway. So they started talking about the positive things. I can write about that, and I could write a paragraph about that. And I could say, then someone else said, I could write about where we could put the mural. We could put it downtown on a building. So that really got them flowing about what they could do. And then we just let them write together. And
one of the things through the research is collaborative writes, that through the 6 stages is exactly what Ms. Hodges talked about, that we don't just directly throw kids out to write a full essay, no matter what grade level. We always start through the process when it's a new genre that we do one together. So there's this model collaborative write, or they do one with partners. That's a model collaborative write before they even write an essay on their own. So they have experience with building great writing. They've seen what it looked like through exemplars and weak essays, which we're going to talk about. They then did a collaborative write on a prompt and a text together. And then before they even write on their own, they're getting feedback on that, and we're talking about how to make it better. So they see the process of writing, because it is a process. It's not this standalone in isolation thing that we just hand to kids, that we actually talk through it and that we build from it. The really interesting thing, this was a part of the collaborative write, but also on the desk in the orange are those self-talk statements. So if they need to go back to it, we also sometimes tape on there the mnemonic just as a reference, depending on the topic and the task.
And you can just see on that paper on the right, he has written quite a bit. Not that not just you put a bunch of words down and it's good writing. But that is to us just where they came to us, not writing a whole lot, and just to get them to produce that much writing, we're very proud of them. So they did a good job.
The other part of that we've referenced a few times is the model think aloud. So it helps students monitor their own thinking. It's a complex cognitive activity, which I feel like we could say over and over again about so much in school, but writing in particular. It demonstrates cognitive processes in a clear and explicit way. So when I model my thinking aloud for students, I'm making the thinking clear. That's what we ask a lot in this building is, are we making the thinking clear? for kids. It aids in internalization, that then you become the owner of it and you're thinking about it. And then it's practical, it's easy, and it's impactful. And I have teachers who say to me, well, I don't feel comfortable doing that like rogue in a classroom, standing up under an elbow and modeling the think aloud. Well, okay, let's make a video of it. We all have iPhones. Quick after school, 5 minutes. If you go ahead and type out your think aloud so that way that you have it on paper, and then you just read it. You don't even have to have your picture on there. You could just, and we'll show you a clip of that. We have a teacher who feels really comfortable doing it, and so he stands in front of his math class and he models a think aloud for them. He says, okay, the first thing today, guys, and this is a class where Ms. Hodges co-teaches. And so she's in there, there are EL students, there are other students. It's a benefit for all students. And so he says, this first problem, I want to model this for you. So this first problem is about ratios. And I'm going to stand up here and I just want you to put your pencil down or close your computer screen, and I want you to listen to my thinking. I'm going to think out loud. So things I wouldn't normally say, I'm going to actually make that clear. So when I read this problem, I think, whoa, word problems, not my favorite. I'm a math guy. Why do they put word problems in math? Okay, but I know word problems are a thing, and I know that it's real life, and I can do this. We've worked on it in class. And he makes that thinking transparent. How he even takes his negative thought and makes it positive. And so he does that for kids. He feels comfortable doing that. It's less than 5 minutes. He makes it happen because he's pre-planned it. And then he turns and he says to kids, okay, what did you see there? What did I do? And he makes notes. And then he says, now this is your success criteria. This is what you need to do. You need to turn your negative into a positive. You need to think through the steps. This is what I'm going to refer back to on this next problem that I want you to try on your own. So building the capacity in our students. But they're teachers, right, who don't feel comfortable with that. So they say, well, can I make one and it not have my picture? 100%. We'll play this short clip. This is from an English classroom and a teacher thinking through a model think aloud.
Okay, here we go. I'm facing another writing prompt, and I'm going to need to write another essay. So let me think through this process. How should I get started? I always feel overwhelmed when I look at these essays and these prompts, but that's okay. I know I have the tools. I know I can do this. We've done it in class. So I'm just going to focus on what we've learned and use my tools to do a good job. Okay, here we go. I know that the first thing I need to do is pull apart the prompt, organize my notes, and then write and say more. So I know for the P in PAL, I can draw a do-what chart at the top corner of my paper to help me pull apart the prompt. Okay, let me draw my chart. Do what? Okay, now that I've pulled apart the prompt in my do what chart, I can see that the prompt is asking me to explain. So that tells me this is an informative, explanatory essay, which means I can use the tool TIDE.
So we won't go through that whole thing, but the teacher played that for students and they had just a little half sheet with questions on it. What do I hear positive? What do I hear procedural? What questions do I have? And then they ask themselves, how can I apply this before I begin writing? So how can I apply this moving forward? And so the part of that, though, is the process to discuss what did you hear? What did you notice? What questions do you have? So that we want to make the thinking clear to our students.
Yeah, and even with positive self-talk, some of our students, like they'll say, I'm applying this because I'm telling myself I messed up, but I can hit the undo button. And like they're saying, or I can hit Control-Alt-Delete. So they're just saying like they are thinking aloud about how to solve computer issues. I'm sure you guys have endured that this year as well. So that's one way they've kind of virtually learned, like implemented it virtually, but they can also hear those videos on Google Classroom, and they can, hear the teacher think out loud. Especially, and with the math problem, we talk about mnemonics. In our math department, we use the mnemonic cubes. He was talking about the math teacher. We circle the key numbers. In the math problem, Mr. Jones, I was with him yesterday. He said the most important thing, you guys, in a math problem is the numbers, and that sometimes they're not spelled out, they're written out. So we have to have to read that. Then we underline the question, we box keywords, math action words, and then we evaluate. And of course, in math, we do solve and shape. But that is the mnemonic we use for the math classroom, and we definitely model those out loud, how to tackle those word problems.
we've just sort of moved that research-based knowledge over to Google Classroom, and teachers have recorded these annotated, like with their annotated text, and they're thinking aloud. And what's beneficial for our EL students in particular is that they can play it multiple times. Not only are they hearing the teacher read, so they're hearing a good reader read it, but they're also seeing the thinking process. So then that teacher schedules office hours, and they meet back with them and say, okay, what questions do you have? Or what gaps do I need to fill in? And they ask them these questions that we sort of already talked about was, what positive statements do I hear? What are the procedural or the steps? What questions do I have from this point, and how can I use this strategy moving forward? What is the knowledge that I've gained from it, from the steps, but whether they're positive or procedural, that I can apply in other classrooms and other areas? So this is the time for Q&A. So if there's any questions, Dr. Clark?
We have a couple questions that have come in.
Okay.
So Stephanie wanted to ask, in this process, particularly with beginning writers, when do you begin to talk about grammar and punctuation? That's one question. And then a second question from Jackie. How do you go about teaching a newcomer the steps to writing when they're just learning English at the middle school level?
Those are two great questions. To the first one about the grammar and the syntax, is we really do that in the review process. So once we write a little chunk together, or it could even be a collaborative write, or it could be so let's start with that. It could be a collaborative writing that we've written through it and kids didn't get everything right. So we pull it up and we talk through it like Ms. Hodges mentioned earlier. Well, you read that out loud and you heard a period there. Okay, let's put a period. So why do we need a period? What is that function in the English language? What does it do? Well, it stops a sentence before a new sentence starts. So we like to embed grammar throughout. Now, there are times that as we talk back to that, consumption and creation, that we do consume some small manageable grammar lessons in chunks, but they play into the lesson that we're teaching. We don't teach them in isolation because we want kids to see the connection. Anything you want to say on that one?
No, yes, and sometimes we do incorporate, if we do see that, and sometimes we do when the newcomer comes down, we will incorporate grammar bell ringers.
Yeah.
We did that last year just to help them, and because the other students need to revisit it. But again, we will probably not spend a whole entire period on it, but we will talk about the bell ringer and the grammar punctuation that way.
No. And to the other question, I think it was Jackie, to that question, what we do is, well, we first think about those students, right? As we have different leveled students throughout, but I mean, that's a small manageable chunk that we think, how can we do this together? So that one does start with collaborative. I mean, everything that we do, that we're putting the small tide graphic organizer in front of them, and we're only going to do a paragraph. That's all we're going to do. That's what we're going to start with. And we may be circled up in a round group and we're talking about the importance of it. And it's okay if another student's translating that knowledge if we need to. And we have some examples of students who did actually that and how their essays turned out. But we chunk that, we write it together, we use stems and build it together. So I may be under the Elmo writing and the kids are just copying for the moment. Like we're just building it together. And then I'll ask a question, okay, what should we say next? And then we'll write that sentence. So it's probably a 2 to 3 day process to even build a paragraph together.
And our teachers they are really good about translating the charts. And even sometimes when the kids do come to us with education, just the writing styles in Latin countries are different. Like they're very superfluous and have all this extra, whereas the United States writing is more direct and to the point. So sometimes we'll just, pull them aside, because even when they translate it, it's just real flowery and extra. And, and we talk about, even in English, we say the red car, or we could say the big red fast car. You don't know what I'm talking about until I say car. I could be talking about a big red fast boat or a big red fast dog. But where in Spanish, they tell you the noun first, and then they start describing what they're talking about. I drive a car, very red and fast. So very fast red. So sometimes we just have a little one-on-one conference with them. And again, we do let them use Google Translate quite a bit, and we do try to translate documents. Like he said, we do tell our teachers, you can, definitely modify their grades, and we tell them they can average in an effort grade with their actual grades. Like if they feel like, if that had been a student that only wrote 2/3 of it, they might have a 67. But if we average in 100, that kid's going to have an 80 or a 90 grade. So we're okay with that, or we just give them an effort grade depending on that. But like he said, we don't hold it. And a teachers ask us that too, like, what is my expectation for a new student? Like, am I expecting them to write 5 paragraphs? Am I expecting them to write 5 sentences? Like, they want to know because they want to hold that student accountable, but they also want to be fair to that student. So like he said, we just do 1 paragraph.
And what's important out of that is that at the, something we're not talking about today, but at the beginning of the year when we meet with our teachers, we go through their WIDA scores and we map them out on that continuum of where is this student, so that way we know the kids in the room, right? So from everything that we just said, I think the key takeaways are, 1, know your kids and know what they are. And 2, then think about, okay, I know the strategy of we're going to use a linear graphic organizer, we're going to use stems, and we're going to do it collaboratively to begin with. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah. And they have the can-do descriptors, so they might know, okay, well, this student should be able to answer the what question. So maybe he can answer the what question and really focus on that. Yeah. But that is a really, really good question.
2 good questions.
Yes. Thanks so much. Just reminding viewers, go to the chat feature, submit your questions, and we'll get them to the presenters at our periodic Q&A session. So if y'all will continue.
One of the things that we have found to be effective is exemplar and weak essays. So how do we put really good essays in front of kids? As the English teacher and even as the ELL teacher last year, Hodges would be like, "Where'd you get that exemplar?" Well, I wrote it. But what do you want students to produce? And that may look different from what, knowing your kids, from what I know my kids can do based off this standard, right? The standard in the task doesn't change. But this is the essay I know they can get to, or this is the essay I know they can get to. And so when you create those exemplars, then you put those in front of kids, and then we break them apart. It provides a clear example of a target. It then sets the expectation. This is what you should be able to do at 7th grade. This is what you're going to be able to do in Mr. Bowles' classroom. Then I show them the weak essay. Now, this essay maybe, and they chuckle a little because I wrote that one as well, but they say, "Oh my gosh, that kid, I can't believe they did that." Or, "Oh, that looks like so-and-so's." Now, we're not going there. But you then set the stage of your expectation. So we talk about how do we build expectations. Well, when this is the expectation of my class and it's the exemplar and this is the weak, this isn't going to cut it. Now, we're not going to give you a bad grade for this, but we're then going to build in feedback sessions where then you can get to this. So setting that expectation, and it can be used to demonstrate what not to do as well. So we use exemplars and weeks for the grammar question that we had, is that in a weak essay, we'll put really bad grammar things or just do 5 run-on sentences in a paragraph. And then we'll say, okay, what is wrong with this week? And we talk about revising a weak essay. It can be used as a comparison source for evaluation so kids can see the difference. Is it there yet? Is it better? And then, like I said, it sets the standard or the expectation for us.
And he's talking about putting student work on the board. And I do like it diversely because you can't really tell the handwriting because a lot of it's typed. And our students love their work on the board. Like, oh, can you put mine on there? Can you put mine on there? Even if it's not maybe exemplary, they love seeing their work on the board, and they love hearing the teacher give feedback and the students give feedback. So those are really good strategies.
Yeah, exemplar and weak samples we use often in our classrooms. So this is an example of, like we said prior to COVID, where we blew it up and we made it really large, and we were able to have students look through the parts. So we're talking about informational writing here, and students were breaking down the parts of TIDE, the important evidence, detailed examination, the ending, and they were going through that process together and then highlighting and annotating based off the rubric. So with a weak example, we often name the example. It's one that we've written or one that we've created, and so then we'll say, how can we help this person? And I don't know why, but so often kids from East Tennessee will say, let's name it. It helps us have this conversation. They'll say, well, let's call it Bubba. And so we'll help poor Bubba on his writing and try to make it better. So we put a week underneath the Elmo and we talk through it. And that's where we talk through those grammar parts. That's where we talk through the writing portions of, this sentence doesn't make sense, or this doesn't align to the rubric, or where's the TIDE? I don't see that they have a topic. I don't see they have important evidence. And then we fix that together as a class. So it's not their work. It's not a student's work in the class so no one's embarrassed. It's one that we can say, oh, we've got to help this. And so often kids will say, oh my gosh, I cannot believe he did that. And you think in your head, now this is not the think aloud. You think in your head, oh, I know that's yours. But it's not, And so how can we help them get better? And through that process, what they're saying to themselves through that self-talk is they're saying, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to turn that in. So how can we get better together? Another thing that we use is checklist.
Yeah, and students really like a checklist because it's direct and they can mark. And I like checklists, even when our principals are very good about sending out checklists of what needs to be done, like beginning of the year, end of the year. And students appreciate them too because it's very clear what they need to get done for the task. Because sometimes, like I said, they just don't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
So used effectively, checklists can help students develop metacognitive awareness of their intellectual processes. By articulating and labeling operational steps, checklists scaffold students' metacognitive development, and checklists help learners develop confidence and independence as they internalize new operations and strategies. And that research comes from Rollins. Check it out, using checklists to support student learning.
We also have done research on checklists in what's called success criteria, right? It's the same thing. You're probably familiar with that, but which is ultimately a checklist. I was in a math class yesterday evaluating and looking at a teacher who had a success criteria, and it was full bulleted that I will be able to do these 4 things when we're done. It's ultimately a checklist, but we talk to kids about it being success. When you can master these 4 things, or when you get these 4 things, you have then had success on this standard or this task. Help them building that ownership of their own learning and that self-regulated strategy development. This is a checklist, though, for when we look at narrative writing. And so these checklists, we have one for narrative, informational, and argumentative. And they have been created based off the Tennessee rubric. And so we just took the Tennessee rubric as a collaborative team in our PLC time, and we broke it down to its important parts. And then when students meet down in groups, so when they come down, literally we move to the floor sometimes. So when I say down, that's what I mean. And so then they're working with this essay or this large chart paper where they've been writing collaboratively, and then they start going through this checklist. Now, we're all about positive self-talk. So there is no no. There is no no in our classrooms or in this building. It's not yet. I have not mastered that yet. So the growth mindset. But I will get it because I know to do this. Or I realize that we left it out. So they go through this and they look at setting. They're like, yes, yes. They get to characters. Yes. They get down to where characters, it's not clearly and logical. Not yet, but I'm going to fix it. And so having that checklist and that conversation with kids.
Yeah, and if you haven't read Carol Dweck and Growth Mindset, any of her research is very well written.
So this is an example from a teacher's Google Classroom where they did it collaboratively. So she partnered up students, a mix of students, ELL, SPED students, and in person, and she had special groups that she worked with, and she went around and checked in virtually online, but they had a collaborative write that they had written together, and then the other group was providing feedback on the side. We have the technology to be able to provide feedback anywhere in the world, and they were doing it based off of this checklist. And so they had the checklist. We show them how to split a screen. We teach them the process, all the things that you'd have questions about it. Well, how do they know to do that? Well, we had to show them. That was a lesson within itself. But then the feedback that they start giving each other, maybe put the actual wording of the story, make sure you're getting it from the text, because, that's what the checklist says. The checklist says that it should come from the text, that it's important details from the narrative, not that you just made up extra, right? Like, how do I know that character felt that way? And so helping them guide through that process and give each other feedback. Collaborative writing and planning. Massages?
Yeah, so like he said, we do the together, the collaborative planning, and then they write on their own. And this one was about, they could pick an activity for their school. They could do a soccer club, an art club, or whatever club they wanted. So
it was a weed prompt.
Yeah, so they're just getting together and they're writing about that they want to do a soccer club. And honestly, our school started a soccer club because they did get student feedback. And we said, this is real life and you guys can make your voices heard. You can write to newspapers, you can write to websites. A lot of times they want to, to please, the people that are, on their website. So it's just a good real life activity. And, they just wrote together. They wrote, we did it together. We planned together. They jotted stuff down independently. They wrote. We always do make them do it independently before they get with a partner, because his ideas might influence me, or my ideas might influence him. So, or I might forget what I'm going to say because he's talking. So we do make them write independently, and then they can get together and we can say, yeah, if you didn't get that down, that's a great idea. Get that on your paper, and then they come together and kind of combine it into one big.
That also helps us as the teachers in the room, is that when we do that, if you'll notice on the left under the student's arm, he has his writing from the day before. And so when we go through that and we pulled it apart and we created a plan and then they wrote that chunk, then when they turn that into me on the way out the door and I'm saying bye, then we can look at it collaboratively and say, okay, we're going to pair students tomorrow. Which students should be paired? What's the most effective pairing so that both are gaining from each other? So then the next day they come in and we talk about collaborative writing. We talk about, okay, how do you take your two separate ideas? And we sometimes model that. Like, we'll stand under the Elmo and we'll have our two different ideas and we'll both read our first sentence and then we'll say, oh, I like yours. Or, oh, what if we combined them? and teaching them to have that dialogue and to have that conversation. So we're not only growing writing, but in everything that we do, we're also trying to grow thinking. We're trying to grow the dialogue and conversation, the speaking and listening, and to make that happen for students.
And we also, the second day, we usually say, your writing is in pencil, and then the next day if you're adding, you're using a red pen. So that way they have accountability to where they have to write that first day, plus we take it up so we can see what they wrote. But we like to see what they're writing down from their peers. Like, are they picking out the right stuff from their peers? Are they doing what we're asking them to do? And then we can just see their original writing and their improved writing. So that helps too. Just little things like that where they write in pencil, and the next day they use a red pen to add their friends' ideas or the teacher's ideas.
And what Ms. Hodges talked about with that, we then got a soccer club out of that, was that, we had 3 periods over the course of the day doing this work, and then we collaboratively joined them together at the end of the day doing what we call our 6-period or extended skills block, which is the RTI and ELL and a lot of other things. But and then we drew upon the best. So when you look at this research, we took the strengths of all the members and we said, okay, these are the ones that are up, the 4 anchor charts that we were like, these are the best. How do we then build one that we're going to give to the principal? Y'all want this. We want you to be able to have a voice at the table. Let's build this together. So they worked as a collaborative group. We typed, we had our computer connected to the smartboard and we typed. So they were building their essay by sharing ideas and speaking out and building off their work. And then working that collaborative group really, I think, built in that peer review, because we were talking about it and making it better, and someone would say, oh, we need an exclamation point there. That's exciting. Like, that's good news. And so building that together.
And our administrators are really good about getting teacher feedback and student feedback. Like, sometimes I ask the teachers, which we're not really doing reward days this year, but in the past, what would be some good ideas for reward day? So we ask the students, and we have them write, petition your principal. What do you want for reward day? And then some of them said, I just want to go outside. Some said, I just kind of want to, do nails and makeup, or something. So look, so one of our teachers had like color street stick-ons and stuff. But the students really have a voice. And last year they had a student feedback panel. And I would tell my students ahead of time, because there was an EL student that was on the feedback panel. And I said, you guys, and you need to, let's all get together, because the principals are going to, and they would have the questions. The principal's going to ask these students for feedback. So let's get together and let's give him some feedback to take to our administrators. And the administrators employ the student feedback. So it's just a good way for them to see the power of this. The students can write. It's a good way to get your ideas put into action, because if it never gets up the chain, we don't know what you guys want for reward day. But we can make it happen if it's reasonable.
So just to touch on that, and also to highlight the work that Ms. Hodges does in the classroom. So, and that panel, they come to us at lunch. They have lunch with me and Dr. Green in a conference room. We make it like where there's name labels, and so we are very strategic though of making sure that we have a diverse background of students. There are 2 or 3 ELL students in there. They're just regular everyday students, and so when they come in, Ms. Hodges students come in, they've had their questions, and they have written responses to these questions. And so I ask the first question, and I'm just typing on my computer to take feedback, and I start to hear these students' responses, and I say, that's really detailed. And he'll hold up his paper, and that's amazing. And so we're trying to create students who are self-regulated and who are lifelong learners, but we're also trying to create citizens, right? Like, we want the best that can come out of this building, but we also want an educated citizenry that is the leaders of tomorrow. I mean, that's our big vision, right? Every day, all of us. But it's just really cool to see how these strategies and these steps lend themselves to make that happen. It gives them practice in analyzing writing. We pull it apart. We encourage students to talk about it, as we've said. And it's that complex and difficult task again. How do you take something complex and you put it into manageable chunks? It's not overbearing. I'm doing it together. Now, there are protocols and procedures in place. A lot of teachers will come and say, Dr. Bowles, I don't know that my kids can do that. Like, I've got so-and-so, it's behavior, and so-and-so, it's this. And we talk through that. They'll pop in the office and we'll sit down and we'll say, well, how can we strategically manage those? And, we don't want the learning to change because of behaviors. We want the learning to shape behaviors, right? That engagement is a byproduct of great instruction. What comes to the solution sometimes of those behaviors is when students are doing the doing and versus being bypassers or people just sitting for instruction. So this is another example that students working collaboratively, again, we'll put the precursor or the asterisk before COVID being in each other's faces, but this is what it looked like previously.
Before masks.
Yeah.
Pre-mask.
This is another example of students working collaboratively together and building off their own knowledge.
Just another prompt they could do. They could art club, soccer club.
Mm-hmm. So then we have peer review.
And there's one of the checklists that Dr. Bowles was talking about. So they just checked off, did they meet this criteria? And again, you can just see, to me, again, I know just a lot of words doesn't make it good writing, but it is good writing. And, it's just some people can't believe, like, oh my gosh, you have ELs that write that much. But we just believe, high tides make all boats rise, and we just hold them all to high expectations. And again, that could have, it was through collaborative work and independent work. And then they have the checklist to check off,
and something that we don't always make clear because we live and breathe it every day. But when we say those quotes and we say that, it's internal understanding though of like we had to do something on our end. Like we don't just say we believe all kids can do this and all kids will do this. We say these are the strategies that get kids to this place. We're not changing the standard. We're not changing the WIDA expectation that they can do that, which we know are very high themselves. But these are the strategies that we're going to use to get kids there. And when kids are struggling, we're going to guide them along the way. And we always stop and ask ourselves the question first of, have I shown them? Okay, I've got 54% that didn't do well. I mean, that's a lot. That's half a class. Let's be reflective. What is a strategy or something I can implement to bridge that gap? Obviously, something didn't click. So how can we fix that moving forward? And these strategies are things that we've learned. Peer review is critical. These are the two essays. Ms. Hodges has an essay, I have an essay. And for so long as a teacher, whether it was English or in the EL classroom, I would take these two essays and we would interchange them and we'd say, okay, give each other feedback. I've never shown them how to give feedback. I never talked them through the rubric and said, but these are the things you're looking for. So let's do this one together because I want us to critique and give feedback in a positive manner. What does it sound like to be positive? What does it sound like to ask a strategic question of what should be there? And not only are we helping that student's writing get better, we're then allowing that student to talk and discuss as well as get better themselves. So if I talk to Ms. Hodges about why there needs to be a period there or how that sentence can be better, well, guess what's reflective in my next write? Mine looks better because I've discussed it and talked about it and I've built upon that knowledge. And so it strengthens their own and it makes the transition from writing this primarily for themselves to also who am I writing for in this broader audience that Ms. Hodges talked about. We oftentimes give them tasks like, okay, write to the principal to convince them about soccer club. Or, this is the new initiative that's going on in your district. Are we going to put the mural on the farmer's market, or is there going to be a new park down the road where you can take your dog? Write about it. Which one? Convince us. Argumentative, tree. So, and then we gather feedback and learn for ourselves and also to help them learn through that process. So the question always, have you shown them? We show them what it looks like. So we make videos all the time. This is a video of the principal and the assistant principal. So we also try to be involved in their lessons. I'll jump in and teach Ms. Hodges second or third period sometimes. I walked in the other day and said, what are we doing today? I want to help. And so this is a video of Dr. Green, who's our head principal, and me. And we're just going through this writing feedback together because we want kids to see that this is just a part of learning and this is just a part of the process.
All right, so it's time for us to peer review. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first.
You go first? Okay.
Here's my writing. I've already color-coded it, and so you can see my I's and my D's.
Okay. And I have the score sheets.
Okay.
I know you've already scored yourself, but I don't see that right now because I want to tell you what I think. And I'm glad you color-coded that because that's going to really help us focus on what it is we're looking for. So do you have a goal that you're working on right now?
Yeah, the last thing I wrote, my teacher and I, we decided that we would work on detailed examination.
Okay.
So I was really weak in that area.
Okay, so we'll pay close attention to where you've highlighted yellow for detailed examination.
Okay.
All right, we can do that. Okay, so according to our peer feedback process, what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to do a section at a time. So why don't you read aloud your T section, and I'm just going to listen while you read your topic introduction.
Okay. In the article, help make it through the night, surviving a wilderness emergency.
So we won't go through all that for your benefit and for mine. But we try to make the learning visible, right? The thinking process. So often I would say, my kids can't give feedback to each other. Well, do they know what it sounds like and looks like?
Now, is it 100% all the time? Are they only talking about the writing? No, but again,
Very true.
But I, if I'm up at the front and I'm only calling on one or two, to give feedback, maybe not everybody's listening. But it's like if there's 6 students receiving feedback at the same time, that's going to be more effective than me getting around to all 12. So it really is good. And again, like, I think about as adults, we are, are you guys always 100% on task all the time, when you're with your friend? So, but they really do, for the most part, they do stick to the process. And, especially if the teacher is walking around. So definitely if you're walking around the room, they're going to be on task. So you're not necessarily sitting at your desk or putting in grades. I mean, as long as you are walking around the room, then for the most part, our students do what they're supposed to be doing.
And we talk a lot about videos, and we talked about model technical Louds and that being a video. So it sounds like there's a lot of videos, right? None of that is just bare or by itself. There's always a process after where we do 4 questions, or we talk about, okay, what did you hear? What did you notice? With that one, I can remember teaching it to our EL students in 6th period, and we watched it before we did feedback, and I had an anchor chart, and then I would say, okay, what did you hear there? What did you see? And I would jot down the good things that they heard. Well, I heard you being nice and positive. I heard you say the first step is. And so then when I jot those down, and then Ms. Hodges and I, because we would teach that class together, we'd float around the classroom in their peer feedback. You started to hear those statements. They would say, oh, that sounds good. Or I think the first thing we should do is this. They're taking on and playing with the language. So even for your lower level, you think about students who maybe new or haven't fully acquired the language yet, they're hearing it, they're seeing it, and then they're practicing with it. And it's okay to mess up because it's a process. And so when they feel that environment and they feel that sense of, okay, it's on the board, I just heard them say it. If I have a question, oh, Ms. Hodges. And we go to them then and we say, okay, well, what's something that you heard? Let's reference back. And they start playing with that language, like she said. They may not always get it right. They may be on 100% task, but we're building that through them practicing. I don't want to be the doer at the room, right? I'm the facilitator of knowledge, not the doer. Who's doing the doing is doing the learning. And so making that process happen for kids. Another thing that we talk about is protocols, and you saw it there. We talked about checklists, protocols, and success criteria. They're sort of all the same category.
Yeah, so again, structured step-by-step directions can be used in multiple ways for sharing information, peer editing, brainstorming, or productively discussing an academic topic. And this is true too, that third bullet, it does help shy students to participate. I mean, and sometimes they're the ones that may have, really good insight, but they're just too shy to talk out. So in a partner activity, they will be able to talk and give really good feedback. And then sometimes those students realize, hey, I want to be with that girl. She gives good feedback. So that really does help bring those shy students out of their shells. And, we say, you are such a great peer reviewer. Like you use really good positive words. You don't say, oh, that's bad. You say that needs work. And we talk about that too. You don't want to be too negative to your partner. And sometimes we'll do fishbowl where they sit in the middle and the other ones get around and listen to her talk to him. Listen to how she words things. Because sometimes the students some of it's a language thing where they just don't have the vocabulary that she has. But again, they're just like, well, you can say that because you're a teacher and you know all the big words. But, this is the middle schooler and she can do it too. So that's helpful. Yeah. So it does rein in overly enthusiastic learners, right? The ones that want to shout out all the time. They're just with a partner, and level the playing ground so that neither student personality nor academic confusion define the results of the protocol.
Very true. This is an example of a protocol that we use in the English classroom, and specifically that we use for writing. So we've used it with the EL students. Definitely our higher level students, we have a class set aside that is just sort of we call weed at upper cusp. They're phenomenal. They're students who they impress me so much. But we go through this higher level of find this thesis statement, highlight that. Okay, look for important evidence. And then we talk to them about how all those things are interconnected, and they always go back to the thesis statement. And then when they're missing one of those pieces, then they go back and they revise and they fix their essays moving forward. So virtual learning implementation, sort of the same process. So you see this feedback that was given to students one to each other. So we talk through that, we show the video, all of the same things apply, but it's online. And then we partner them up so that way they can give one-to-one feedback to each other, and they do it through typing.
And highlighting.
Here's another example of that, where they've highlighted and they put things to the side. I think that maybe you should have wrote this. But if you'll look and you can see that feedback, it's pretty detailed that they're providing for each other. So, which is building their own learning and their capacity. I love how you went back and why she came to America and explained that, helping them build that and build those communication skills as well. This just shows what it looks like on another teacher's Google Classroom. So it has the checklist, and then it also has the actual task where it assigns them to groups. They click on it and they go into their groups, and then they work together.
And we even have, if the students do want to write it out, I mean, they're allowed to take a picture sometimes and upload it. So we are showing you a lot of typed work, but they are, sometimes they do write it, take a picture and upload it, but sometimes it's a little much for the students and they would just rather type it. And they take typing class here in related arts, so a lot of them have pretty good typing skills.
The other skill set that has been helpful is that they, for our blended learners or in-person learners, they've been able to have that feedback session separated. So they're not huddled up together, or they're not so Ms. Hodges and I may be two students who, we've been assigned to partner each other. We both have our laptops and we're working to give each other feedback. And if it's a big question, I can always turn and be like, okay, talk to me about this line, because I just want to make sure I'm clear before I give you some feedback. But teaching them that real life skill of how to incorporate the technology as well as provide feedback and use dialogue and so on. A perfect time for a question, if you have any for us.
We have some questions. So I'll present them separately. One of them is, and you sort of addressed it, but I'd like for you to expand on it. Are the students able to use these same tools, the linear organizers or these scaffolding tools, to help them in other subject areas when asked to write? And do other teachers allow them to use these in their classroom to help them? In earlier collaborative sessions in the last couple of years, we've had particular interest in how the ELL teaching bridges to gen ed classes.
Yeah.
So could you answer that question and address that?
I would love to talk to that from the building perspective and then allow Ms. Hodges to talk from the classroom perspective. So from the building perspective, that's a great question. And so something that we've done is that we created a year-long training for all of our teachers. And we provide, this is prior to COVID, last year and the year before, we provided subs for them. And so they would come into the library 4 times over the course of the year, and they would have deep ELL steeped training. We're at like 43% in our building. And so it's important to us that we're making sure those kids see success. And so those teachers, content teachers, by the way, this is math, social studies, science, English, they came in as cohorts over the course of the year, like I said, in 4 times. So they came into the library for that first one, and we talked about the things of ELL, right? We talked about the scores, and we talked about what this means, and we mapped out our kids, and we talked about what do these indicators mean when we think about, at this level, what does that mean this kid can do? They can do descriptors. At this level, what does that mean the student can do? So that way the teachers have the work of that in front of them, the content teachers. Then the second time they came, then we started talking about, okay, this is the level they're at. What are the key strategies that we employ daily, or the new strategies that we need to learn about? And we did both, because Ms. Hodges shared those as the ELL teacher. Well, have you thought about a picture, and have you done this? And so we're building our bandwidth as a building. So that's the first part, is that we went through that course and making sure our teachers are up to date and we understand what great ELL instruction looks like and meeting the needs of all kids. The second part that I would say that plays into that is that then we collaboratively out of the building thought, these are the strategies and researches that we're going to buy into. Now, did every teacher say, yes, I'm into that? No, but we also are teaching kids to self-regulate. So when a student does go into, let's say the social studies classroom and they're doing a DBQ, and the kid says, oh, but I know a strategy for this, which happened the other day. The kid said, I've thought about we should do TIDE for this. We do it in class. What's the important evidence? How do I know it from historical context? I need to explain it, and I need to provide an ending. The teacher doesn't say, no, that's not what we're doing here. The teacher says, that is great, good job. Yes, use that and answer that question. And then we can even compare to the strategy that we're using. We keep trying to have the growth mindset in this building and how we're lifelong learners and how we present that to kids.
Yeah. And even, sometimes we're doing a different, we're going to do a different strategy. So that's informational. Can we use TIDE? Oh, so this is argumentative. Do I need to use TREE? Mm-hmm. Like it's just so ingrained in them that they do take it to other classes. Mm-hmm. And especially if it's an EL student, and the teacher says, that works for you. Yes, that you can write it that way. So yeah, they definitely, the teacher, and we have faculty meetings, and even the English teachers, they tell the whole school, because we did novel studies in the past, but this year a lot of the teachers are doing novels in the 6th period, and sometimes they incorporate writing, so the teachers are saying, if you say pow, tide, and tree, they'll know what to do. So sometimes the 6th period teachers that maybe aren't English teachers, but they're teaching a book study, they rely on that, and the students know what to do. So yeah, they are encouraged to take that information to all their classes.
Well, we see it transfer a lot in sort of 3 places, right? It lives in English, it transfers really well to social studies, and it also transfers really well to science. Our science teachers, when we're doing lots of these virtual labs, which are on the computer, has really helped them be able to it's the scientific evidence of what's the evidence. So, my hypothesis was this, that's my topic thesis or idea, then the evidence that supports it, and then I got to examine it and explain it. This is what I realized to be, and they use STEMs just like you would in the English classroom. Science teachers came to us at one point 2 years ago and said, gosh, they can't write a lab report, or they can't do this. And we're like, oh my gosh, why have we not thought about incorporating tide in science? And just realizing that the strategies play throughout. And I think what we've seen success in is, because it is utilized throughout those content areas, students feel comfortable with it. Students feel like it's a part of the learning process. And that's where they're recalling it on their own in those classes that Ms. Hodges were talking about, because they're so used to seeing them.
Thanks. And what I hear you saying and what I've heard from countless people, and we all need to be reminded, good teaching strategies apply to teaching all students.
Yes.
So these language strategies, it's wonderful. All right,
Yes, ma'am.
Second question. We had a question about, do you allow them to write in their native language? But I'd like to expand it to say, do you ever allow them to mix their native language with their with English? And for these newcomers, what are the early expectations in terms of writing? 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs? In this process of becoming bilingual, how do you set the standards as they move through?
We can both talk to that, yes.
Yeah, so the first one was, yes, we do allow them to write in their native language, especially if they are brand new. And, we used to say, imagine if you, have a 12-year-old, 13-year-old that speaks reading English, and you drop them off in France and they're supposed to write, and, they can do the math in English, but they want you to write it in French and explain your answer. That kid's just going to get really frustrated and maybe not want to do it. But they could, if I could write it in English, and then, we do try to, we have teachers in there with them, or sometimes we have students with them. But yeah, we let them write in their native language, especially when they first come over. And then, if we do know some of the vocabulary, or if there's a cognate like multiplicard, do you know what that is in English? Multiply. Let's focus on that word, multiply. But yeah, we do let them write in their native language, especially if they are coming over. Now, in their ELL classes, we try to expect more English. We have more opportunities to ask them in English, but yeah, we let them write in their native language when they first come.
And to answer your follow-up, Dr. Clark, of can they do both? Yes, 100%. I think the thing that we emphasize in this building a lot to our students and our EL learners is that, 1, that it's a process, but 2, you're on the road to bilingual. Golly day, I wish I was bilingual. And we talk about the jobs that come with that and the success that they have, because we don't want them to lose their L1. We want them to still speak in that language. We want them to still talk in that language. We try to make sure that they understand that it's beautiful to have both, and that it's definitely an asset whenever they move on past middle school. So that's a process for us. One of the other things, though, is during that training, so to help teachers understand that, because I was a content teacher of English who was lived and breathed for 10 years that world. A part of that training is that we had a teacher who spoke German at the time, and she came in and, for teachers, presented a lesson in German. Very short, 10 minutes. I'm going to give a lesson to you, and I'm going to give it in German. And so we asked teachers to write down answers. And so she presented, and they came up, and we all chuckled. We're faculty, right? We're friends and colleagues. And they all chuckled like, I got nothing. I have nothing on this paper. And then we had her teach the same lesson. Like, we had pre-planned for all this. She taught the same lesson using visuals, using gestures, and also having the English and Spanish to main vocabulary words. And when she taught that way, teachers were like, oh my gosh, I get it. I think this is the answer. And so we said, okay, now how does that play out in our classrooms? How do we take what you just experienced and we make sure we're doing that in our content classes for our kids? Not only because, as you said, Dr. Clark, it's good practices for everyone, right? I should see a visual or something. I should see the definition out next to it. But it's also really, really fantastic for our newcomers and our students who are just still learning the language.
And every teacher, we do word walls, and we try to put a picture with the word. because, the student might remember, there's something about plants, but they don't remember the word photosynthesis. So we have photosynthesis, and they have like a picture of the plant and the sun. And like with math product, we have a multiply sign by it. Some we have an addition sign by it. So we do try to help them with the language. But yeah, if they want to write Sumar, but then especially with the cognitive, where we say which one of there looks like, which one is some, so we do kind of help them point it out. But no, we let them write their native language.
I so appreciate the fact that you point out when teachers experience the feeling of hearing instruction in another language, it really expands their empathy for these children. So I think that's very important. I'm happy to hear. And I hear it from you. I hear it from other places as well. We want to value bilingualism. And so we want to let these kids know, you know what, you've got a skill. I wish I had it. And it's a good thing that you're on.
And at the end of the year, we give out awards to like multilingual awards, when everyone's doing Honors Day awards. And like we talk about the fact that these students are bilingual and not just in conversational language, but in academic language. So we do recognize that.
We try to celebrate it.
Yeah. And there's a video on YouTube that we show about Moises, the little boy that's in the English classroom, and the math teacher's talking about blocks, and he's picturing walking down the block, and she's talking about blocks for, perimeter and area. So that I think really helps the teachers put themselves in the shoes of the student.
For you and for those who are watching and other participants in the ELL Collaborative, this could be a topic for a future presentation. So
yes,
keep that in mind. So that's all the questions for right this minute. So I'll click off and let y'all continue.
Thank you.
So talk to us, Ms. Hodges, about some resources that you use in the classroom.
So Linked, I've mentioned that quite a few times. There's a speaking platform, a writing platform, a listening platform, and of course you can read, on the platform. So we use that quite a lot, and I'll show you in a minute. I'll show you some student work from there. And then All Things Topics I wish I'd have discovered this earlier, but they have units that are, it's all about, like you mentioned, Halloween. They have holiday units, or they have traveling. So they have like a listening, a speaking, a reading, writing for a lot of the different units. We have ELL Brain Pop. They do have free ones whenever you go on there if you don't have the school subscription. We've really liked Recess Room. And again, I like this stuff with accountability. Like, there's something where they read a cloud, a little paragraph, and then they have to figure out the main topic, which again does have words from the paragraph. And they let it rain on the tree that it matches. But things like that where the students aren't just, this has the same word. Because that's kind of their coping mechanism. It's like, if I can find stuff with the same words, then it's right. But just they have to kind of read it carefully. And then it keeps up with their score. So that way they can't just be clicking. I can walk around and say, you need to slow down and work. So that is helpful. Cambridge English has a lot of listening activities, speaking activities. It has a little placement test. Because because Bulls and I would look on Teacher Pay Teachers, and everybody's like, where are the ELL? Like, it's just hard to find ELL resources, and ELL teachers should probably attest to that. Now, Finish Line is kind of it's a curriculum that they come up with new stuff every year. So they have a newcomer curriculum, they have kind of a test prep curriculum, and they have Continental Press also does a team kit, like a tool kit, where they have reading, writing, speaking, listening. So we've really appreciated that for our students, and they have free ebooks this year due to COVID. So there's an online component as well, because their test is online and it is virtual this year.
So we sort of just plug this right here. I think it's a great plug for the afternoon session. I think they're going to talk about some of these things. Mm-hmm. So make sure you get on and watch that, because yesterday when I heard some of their ideas, I was like, oh yeah, we use that curriculum. I love that. So make sure you check that out. Mm-hmm. So just to recap the research for us, what got us here, what got us to this space. This was the 6 stages of SRSD from Karen Harris in her 2008 work. Dr. Green and I, who's the principal here, have done lots of work with SRSD and self-regulated strategy development. We've been in Boston and New York, and really working with educators to think about what does it look like to create self-regulated students, right? And so this is focusing on writing. So if you've got a question of like, okay, well, where does that go in the process? So, I know that this mnemonics thing is not a standalone thing. Where does it fall? This is great research to go back to. Now, what we love about this research is that all this in the middle is talking, is focused on writing, but these stages is just great teaching. Dr. Clark mentioned that great teaching is great teaching, and it's so true. And the first stage in any lesson is that you activate and develop background knowledge. And now it gives you ideas around that you play a review game or you introduce or you talk about concepts. Then the second is that they discuss it. How often do we skip that stage? That we're discussing this with kids. And I don't mean the discussion of, well, what do you think about that? But that we're truly having a discussion around it where we're showing the graphic organizer. We're building the strategy used by talking about their current attitudes about writing, or we're repairing weak essays and looking at, exemplar essays. And then we go to the model it stage. So we're 3 stages in and students still have not written. Sort of the same process of, well, how do I make sure that they're getting this deep understanding around writing? Well, we're going to model it. We're going to score it. We're going to analyze it. And we're going to build this collaborative partnership that writing is fluid. And then there's the memorize it stage. So that they have the mnemonic, they have the linear graphic organizer, and we start playing little quick games, bell ringers. Do you remember? Let's recall. Anytime we see a prompt, we know we have to what? We have to PAL, and the P in PAL stands for pull apart the prompt. And with that, we use what? And the kids will go, do what? And we use lots of hand gestures and movement and help them get up, that it's, the tide and the tree and sing, and just so that way that they have those internalized. And then you go on to support it, where you start giving kids that time to write and to revise, and you regular score practice, and there's feedback embedded, and there's small group conferencing. All the things that research has told us over the years in multiple different books and from different people that are just highly effective for kids. And then finally, the independent stage. So we're at stage 6. So for the question of, well, oh my gosh, for newcomers or for students who, have lower abilities, they're not independently writing until stage 6. We're building their capacity. We realize that great instruction isn't just putting work on the desk, but great instruction is building capacity for kids day in and day out through engaging on grade level lessons that meet the standard to get them to where they need to go. And then the other one that our school has truly bought into through our PLC process and through our conversations through all departments is the work of TNTP and the opportunity myth. We spent a lot of the time, we go back to that consumption and creation. And so we just gave we just gave teachers of an envelope, and we just said, everything you hand to a kid, this is prior to laptops and COVID, anything you hand to a kid, I want you to just put it in there. Just put it in there. I don't want you to do anything else with it. And so then we came back together and we put the standard for that on the board, and we said, okay, does this work align to that standard? The standard says to examine. Did they examine? And we started having that conversation about what does it look like to put on grade level work in front of kids every day, no matter their background. That's what the research says, that they need exposure to it. Now, that does not mean that we're not employing strategies and strategic moves to help kids get there. But every day I'm at least letting them see it, whether I'm modeling it, whether there's an exemplar for it, but that kids have access to it. I don't want that at the end of the week. So long we talk about this trajectory. I used to plan lessons where my rigorous on grade level high end task was at the end on Friday. And so what happens when it snows on Friday? Or what happens when it's out? But that we talk about this through line, instead of going this way from Monday to Friday, it goes this way, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That every day we start with going through those 6 stages, but that every day students get to tackle or test. And it may be flipped. Maybe they start with the high level task, and then you break it down into chunks. But they need exposure to it, and they need to be able to see it. Recap our purpose for us, Ms. Hodges.
So again, we wanted to learn strategies and best practices that scaffold all students to success with rigorous on-grade level instruction.
So we said a lot today, right? We talked about all those. We talked about the research. We talked about the actual strategies and the things we've done in this building. But this is where the money is. This is when I get really excited. We want to show you some student work from it, because people say to us all the time, it can't be done. No, my kids can't do that. So I want to show you some examples. This is a student who came to us. His name was Isidro. He had limited learning in his previous country. He had been to school on and off for a few years. And this is after us going through these 6 stages with him when it came to writing. He was co-taught in the English classroom. He received additional services at the end of the day. But he had the same state zoo task, if you're an ELA teacher or you have any knowledge of that every other student had, but he went through all these stages, and this is what he produced. So I just want to read you just a short clip. Zoo task at the top. He said, over the years, obviously there's some spelling issues, zoos have changed in order to better serve animals. In the Stripes Will Survive, it states, the species survival plan he inserted, was created. Now, he inserted it like that because he had saw me do it in a previous model. He thought that's what you did with those two words. We worked on that to make sure that threatened and don't disappear animals. So, he wrote an entire essay. Now, it's not perfect by any means. There's grammar, there's syntax, capitalization, right? But when we sat down with him for peer feedback and I had him read it to me in broken English, I typed it out, and this is it. Over the years, zoos have changed in order to better serve animals. In the Stripes Will Survive, it states, the species survival plan was created to make sure that the threatened and endangered animals species don't disappear. This shows us that zoos are making sure this is a student with limited English who came into this country. Now, his writing was not perfect, and his writing isn't like everybody's writing, but through the process and the stage. It didn't happen overnight. It was probably 6 to 9 weeks, but this is a student who is very capable. And so we talk about that a lot in this building, making sure we have the high expectations, we're putting the on-grade level work, and we're providing the strategies and scaffolds.
And even when we were in the TESOL program at Carson Newman, and we have a lot of students actually at one of our schools from Japan. Like we have a lot of students there's quite a few Asian students in our district, not necessarily at our school. And, our teachers at Carson Newman would say, whether or not you use articles just proves whether or not you're from one of the Americas. Because just other countries don't use articles like the and a and an. So, but they were just focused on the communicability. Can you understand what the student is trying to communicate? So like Dr. Bowles was saying, on paper, it wasn't 100% correct, but, when he put it this way, he understood it, on the student's paper. So, for the students, we just, can you communicate what you're trying to communicate?
And we celebrated that success, jumping up and down, making a chart, and talking about it. This is another example from Ms. Hodges' class.
Yeah, so we're talking about the reward day because, the principals ask us, what are we want to do stations for reward day, maybe have a movie room, maybe have them go outside, and then what did I ask the teachers, what do you guys think the kids would enjoy? Mm-hmm. So we thought, well, here's an idea. Let's ask the kids what the kids would enjoy. So, and again, we turn that into a writing task. So they're bought into the task, so and we did this too. It happened like right after, the WIDA assessments. We got them every 9 weeks. So one person wrote, dear principal, I'm writing you to request a special, and we did independent, then they did a whole group write. So it's from our 6th period class. I'm writing you to request a special reward day for LHMS WIDA students. Students at Lincoln Middle have been working hard to prepare for the WIDA test. We have taken multiple practice tests, such as listening, reading, speaking, and writing. All students have truly given their best efforts. Because of all their hard work, we believe that a special reward day is in order. We would love to have the opportunity to recharge our minds, relax with our friends, and gain some much-needed motivation if you allow us to have a much-needed break. We would like to create our own reward day. Our dream reward day would consist of rotations with different activities. Some of these activities could include playing basketball or another sport, taking a walk outside, going to the park, watching a movie with popcorn, or being able to use our phones during lunch. If you think this is a reasonable idea, we'd love to discuss further about how to make it happen. Students, all of us are so excited, to show all that we gleaned, learned, and just how much we've grown this year. We want to celebrate the success with a special reward day at Lincoln Middle. We want you to join us. Thank you for your time and consideration on this matter. If you have further questions, please feel free to ask any students from Mrs. Hodges. And actually, the principals did do the phone thing, or students that attendance, they did an attendance reward. Mm-hmm. If they ever had the most attendance for that grade level, they could use their phones at lunch. And it was easy stuff. And it's oh, that's easy. You want to, you can use your phones or go outside. Oh, we can pop popcorn for your movie.
But I think, the point of that is kids got what they wanted ultimately, yes. But the knowledge they built writing to get there. Yeah. That, they're being able to communicate together, speaking, listening, writing, reading, and all those WIDA can-dos that we talk about. This is another example from the website. Was it linked?
Yeah, this is linked, or actually BrainPop, but they do it on both websites. It's about the same. So again, this is from last year, but this was a student that went on, but he was so excited because we asked for permission to put his in here. So he says that a whale is the same as a dolphin. This is kind of his before, his first draft. That a whale is the same as a dolphin because both have to get up and get air, and the have tail, fan, and both have tooth. Something different is that the whale is bigger than the dolphin, and both live in the ocean. The whale live in the cold, but not the dolphin. That is all they have in common or different.
So first draft, before having any of these stages of lessons, any feedback process and going through those that we've talked about today. And then this is the after.
Yeah, so that was just a couple of days, like November 1st. So, and this was a different set of writing, but a problem is that California each year it gets on fire. And again, he's just doing capitalization, punctuation. One way to stop California from burning is that people should help pick up the dry leaves. The second solution is that people should not throw cigarettes. They talked about that. Cigarettes on the leaves or where there is grass. The third solution is that sprints everywhere because in California it does not rain a lot. The fourth way is that they should take care that no one smokes or they're close to leaves. That is all the solutions they could try to do this. California's not
still not perfect, but you see the progression. Yeah. So that writing isn't a one-time isolated thing that we do with our students, but that we're really trying to build that capacity and realize that there's always room for improvement. And that from the first one to this one, you see the use of transition words and capitalization. And it wasn't a standalone, let's capitalize the letters activity. It's that we're really embedding the work and the knowledge within what they're doing.
Yeah, and that was when California did have those fires and it was on the news. So again, we do try to tie it to stuff that is
current,
realistic, current. And they really get into that. Middle schoolers get into that. They want to know what's happening and they like writing about that. So that has been helpful to us.
So at this point, as we would say with kids, questions, concerns, deep-seated emotional problems, there's probably a lot of those this past year. But anything that you have for us or questions that you have for us, we'd be happy to answer those or to address those.
Yeah, because that concludes our presentation.
Dr. Boyles and Ms. Hodges, I feel like I've had a mini college course this morning. You presented us with lots of information. You presented us with some rich ideas for strategies and step-by-step procedures, and I'm really grateful for your time this morning. We don't have any other questions at this time, so but let me remind everybody that if you have any questions, we've set up a new discussion board associated with the ELL Collaborative. And I'll ask Dr. Boyles and Ms. Hodges if they will just sign on to that discussion board so that if there are any specific questions for them, they could respond to that. So Dr. Boyles and Ms. Hodges, thanks so much. And we'll ask you to sign off now, and I'm going to wrap it up for the morning. Thank you.
Thank you all for the opportunity. It was a pleasure to talk about some things we're really passionate about.
All right. So from Hamblin County, thank you.